Done. Worthless. 3 SEAL instructors dragged her unconscious body across the sand. Blood trailed behind her like a death sentence being written in real time. They threw her into the attack dog kennel. 6 Belgian Malinois. Trained killers. What those instructors didn't know would end their careers by sunrise. Those dogs had been raised by her hands, and the scar hidden beneath her torn sleeve was a mark only 9 people in the entire Department of Defense could verify. Before we continue, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're new here, subscribe now. This one will stay with you. The gate clanged shut behind her. Instructor Sergeant Kyle Brennan stood outside the chain-link fence, his arms crossed, watching with the satisfaction of a man who believed he'd finally won a war he'd been fighting for 6 weeks. Let's see how tough you are now, sweetheart. Inside the kennel, 6 Belgian Malinois turned toward the sound of a body hitting concrete. Their ears flattened, their muscles coiled. These weren't pets. These were weapons with heartbeats trained to shred intruders on command. Raven Cole didn't move. Her olive shirt was torn at the collar, revealing bruises that mapped 6 weeks of what Brennan called remedial training. Her dark brown hair had come loose from its regulation tie, spreading across the concrete like spilled ink. Blood trickled from a split lip she'd earned 3 hours ago when she'd refused to ring the bell. The first dog approached, a massive male named Thor, 90 pounds of muscle and teeth. He'd taken down armed combatants in training simulations. He'd been taught that anything inside this kennel without authorization was prey. Thor lowered his head, his lips pulled back. Brennan leaned forward, waiting for the scream. It never came. Instead, something happened that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Thor stopped. His nose pressed against Raven's forearm against the torn fabric of her sleeve. He inhaled deeply. Once. Twice. Then his tail wagged. "What the hell?" Brennan muttered. Raven's eyes opened. Not with fear, not with panic, with recognition. "Hey, boy," she whispered. "It's been a while." Thor lay down beside her. Not attacking. Guarding. One by one, the other dogs approached. Freya, the female who'd earned 3 combat deployments. Odin, the veteran who'd lost half an ear in Afghanistan. Valkyrie, Fenrir, Loki, and Storm. Each one pressed close to Raven's body, forming a protective circle around the woman the instructors had thrown away like garbage. Brennan's satisfaction curdled into confusion. "What is this? What's happening?" He grabbed the fence, shaking it. "Get up! Get away from her!" The dogs ignored him completely. Raven sat up slowly, her hand finding Freya's head. The dog pressed into her palm, with the familiarity of an old friend reuniting after years apart. "You remember me," Raven said softly. "Good girl, good girl." The kennel master arrived 3 minutes later. Staff Sergeant Miguel Torres had worked with Special Operations K9 units for 15 years. He'd seen things that never made it into official reports. He knew marks and signs and legends that existed only in whispered conversations between operators who'd earned the right to whisper. His flashlight swept across the kennel. It stopped on Raven's left forearm. Her sleeve had torn further during the fall, exposing skin that hadn't seen daylight at Coronado before this moment. Torres saw the tattoo clearly. A wolf's head circling a blade. Black ink on pale skin. His radio clattered to concrete. "Mother of God!" Brennan turned. "Torres, what's wrong with you? Get these dogs under control." Torres didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Raven's arm. "Sergeant, I asked you a question." "That mark?" Torres said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you know what that mark means?" Brennan glanced at Raven's forearm. "It's a tattoo. So what, half these candidates have tattoos?" "Not like that one." Torres finally looked at Brennan, and there was something in his expression that made the instructor take a step back. "That's the Fenrir mark. Only 9 people in the world carry it. 9 people in the entire Department of Defense." I don't know what you're talking about. You wouldn't. Torres pulled out his phone, his hands shaking. You're not cleared to know. He made a call that would change everything. 6 weeks earlier, Raven Cole had arrived at Naval Special Warfare Center Coronado at 0430. Her file said she was 22 years old, a former veterinary technician from Fort Benning who'd cross-trained to Navy and requested SEAL assessment. Nothing remarkable, nothing threatening, just another female candidate who'd probably ring the bell before Hell Week began. Senior Chief Kyle Brennan had reviewed her packet personally. Another one, he'd said to Instructor First Class Derek Webb. Third female candidate this year. What's the over-under on how long she lasts? Webb shrugged. 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if she's stubborn. I give her 10 days. They'd been wrong about everything. Raven had stepped off the bus with 36 other candidates, her dark brown hair pulled tight against her skull, her olive undershirt visible beneath her camouflage blouse. She was lean in a way that looked almost fragile, her frame suggesting someone who survived on efficiency rather than bulk. Brennan noticed her immediately. Something about the way she moved bothered him. An economy of motion that didn't match her file. A stillness between actions that spoke of someone who'd learned to conserve energy in environments where waste meant death. Her eyes scanned the compound with a precision that felt practiced. You, Brennan called out during the initial formation. Candidate Cole. Raven stepped forward. Instructor Sergeant? Your file says veterinary technician. That means you played with puppies while real soldiers were downrange. Is that correct? I worked with military working dogs. Instructor Sergeant. Dogs. Brennan smiled without warmth. You taught dogs to sit and stay. Now you think you can become a SEAL. I'm here to find out, Instructor Sergeant. Something flickered in her eyes when she said it. Not defiance exactly. Something deeper. Something Brennan couldn't identify and therefore couldn't tolerate. We'll see about that. The first week separated the tourists from the committed. Candidates dropped at a rate of 3 per day. The bell rang with metronomic regularity as men who'd dreamed of becoming SEALs discovered that dreams and reality operated on different frequencies. Raven didn't ring the bell. She didn't complain. She didn't make excuses. She didn't seek sympathy or accommodation. She simply endured hour after hour, evolution after evolution, with a patience that began to unsettle the instructors who watched her. She's not normal, Webb said during the second week. I've seen hard candidates before. This is different. Brennan watched Raven complete a punishment evolution he'd designed specifically for her. 4 hours of surf torture alone, while her class moved on to other training. She'd emerged from the Pacific blue-lipped and shaking, but her eyes held the same calm they'd held when she walked in. She's hiding something, Brennan said. Like what? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. He made her his project. Extra punishment evolutions. Additional physical training. Isolation drills designed to break her mentally when he couldn't break her physically. He told himself it was about standards, about ensuring that everyone who earned the trident deserved it. He was lying to himself, and somewhere deep down, he knew it. The other candidates had started calling her Ghost, not because she was quiet, though she rarely spoke more than necessary, but because she seemed to disappear during evolutions, blending into whatever environment surrounded her, then reappearing exactly where she needed to be. It unnerved some of them, made others curious, made the instructors suspicious. Candidate Thomas Mercer caught up to her during a rare moment of downtime in week 3. Cole? Hey, Cole. Raven turned. Mercer. Can I ask you something? You just did. He smiled despite himself. Fair point. Look, the guys and I have been talking. How do you do it? Do what? Stay so calm. Brennan's been riding you harder than anyone else in the class. That evolution yesterday should have broken you. Should have broken anyone. But you came out of the water looking like you'd just taken a long bath. Raven was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that Mercer couldn't quite understand. My father used to say that survival isn't about strength. It's about reading the world faster than it can kill you. Your father, was he military? Staff Sergeant Marcus Cole, Special Operations. He died when I was 17. Helicopter crash during a classified operation. Raven's eyes drifted somewhere far away. They gave my mother a folded flag and a story that didn't make sense. 2 years later, I enlisted. Mercer didn't know what to say. I'm sorry. Don't be. He'd be proud I'm here. She paused. He'd probably also tell me I'm being an idiot for going through this the hard way. But some promises require the hard way. What promises? Raven almost smiled. Almost. Ask me again if I graduate. She walked away before he could respond. Chapter. Week 4 brought Hell Week. 5.5 days of continuous training with minimal sleep. Candidates dropped like casualties on a battlefield, their bodies and minds surrendering to exhaustion that operated on a cellular level. Brennan watched Raven with increasing frustration. She should have broken. Everyone broke during Hell Week. The only question was whether they broke and quit, or broke and continued. Raven showed no signs of breaking at all. On the third night, he found her during a brief rest period. Candidate Cole. She sat up immediately. Instructor Sergeant. You think you're special, don't you? No, Instructor Sergeant. Then why are you still here? Every other female candidate who's come through this program has rung out. What makes you different? Raven met his eyes. In the darkness, her gaze held something that made Brennan take an involuntary step back. I made a promise, Instructor Sergeant, to someone who died believing in something. I intend to keep that promise. A promise? Brennan laughed. This isn't about promises, Cole. This is about capability. Physical capability, and no matter how stubborn you are, biology is biology. Permission to speak freely, Instructor Sergeant. Denied. Then I'll say nothing, Instructor Sergeant. But her eyes said everything. They said she knew exactly what he was. They said she'd met men like him before in places he couldn't imagine. They said she was going to outlast him no matter what it cost. Brennan leaned close. I'm going to break you, Cole. Not because I want to, because you don't belong here. The sooner you accept that, the sooner we can both move on. With respect, Instructor Sergeant, many people have tried to break me. Better people than you. They failed too. It was the closest she'd come to defiance since arriving. Brennan smiled. We'll see. He walked away, planning his next escalation. Chapter. She had almost told him the truth. In that moment, exhausted beyond measure, pushed past limits that most people never encountered. Raven Cole had almost let the mask slip. Almost revealed the woman hiding behind the veterinary technician cover story. She caught herself just in time. Because the truth would have ended everything she'd worked for. The truth was that Raven Cole had stopped being a veterinary technician 3 years ago. The truth was that her real file sat in a classified database that Brennan would never have clearance to access. The truth was that the woman he was trying to break had already been broken and rebuilt in ways that made Buds look like summer camp. After her father died, she'd enlisted with a single purpose: to understand what had killed him. The Army assigned her to the military working dog program at Fort Benning. It seemed like an insult at first. Her father had been a special operations warrior, and they wanted her to train dogs. She learned quickly that the insult was actually an opportunity. Military working dogs operated at the tip of the spear. They deployed with Tier 1 units on missions that didn't exist on paper. Their handlers saw things that conventional soldiers never witnessed. Raven threw herself into the work. For 3 years, she trained dogs for Delta Rangers DevGru. She learned their language. Not commands, but the deeper communication that existed between handler and animal. The tilt of an ear that meant uncertainty. The shift in breathing that preceded aggression. The way a dog's entire body could communicate trust, or its complete absence. She was good at it. Better than good. Good enough to catch the attention of people who operated in shadows. Lieutenant Sarah Webb had found her on a training range at Fort Benning. Raven was working with a Belgian Malinois named Cairo, running him through scent detection drills that went far beyond standard protocol. Webb watched for 20 minutes before approaching. "Specialist Cole." Raven turned, saw the officer's rank, and snapped to attention. "Ma'am." "At ease. I've been watching you work. That dog trusts you more than he trusts his own instincts." "Cairo's a good dog, ma'am. He just needed someone who spoke his language." Webb smiled. "That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. Walk with me." They walked. Webb talked about a program that didn't officially exist, a unit of handlers who operated alongside Tier 1 teams on the most sensitive missions in the world. Handlers who weren't support personnel but operators in their own right. "We call ourselves the Wolf Pack," Webb said. "Stupid name, I know, but it fits. We go where the teams go. We do what the teams do. And our dogs have saved more lives than any weapon system the Pentagon has ever developed." "Why are you telling me this, ma'am?" "Because I want you to join us. Your scores are exceptional. Your handler instincts are better than anyone I've seen in 15 years, and your father was Marcus Cole." Raven stopped walking. "You knew my father." "I knew of him. He was legend in certain circles. The kind of operator everyone whispered about, but nobody could officially acknowledge." Webb turned to face her. "I think you have his gift. The ability to read situations before they develop. To see what others miss. I want to find out if I'm right." "What would that involve?" 3 years of training that makes Ranger School look like kindergarten. Deployments to places that don't appear on any map, and a mark. Webb rolled up her sleeve, revealing a tattoo. A wolf's head circling a blade. "Everyone in the wolf pack carries this. It's our bond. Our promise to each other. A promise that will prove handlers aren't attachments. We're operators. We belong in the fight, not behind it." Raven stared at the tattoo. Something stirred in her chest. Something that had been dormant since they'd handed her mother that folded flag. "When do I start?" The next 3 years remade her completely. She trained in environments that existed outside official military geography. Desert compounds where temperatures exceeded 130 degrees. Mountain facilities where the air was thin enough to make breathing a conscious effort. Urban complexes designed to replicate the worst neighborhoods in the worst cities on Earth. She learned to fight in ways her father would have recognized. Ways that had nothing to do with size or strength and everything to do with precision timing and the willingness to cause maximum damage in minimum time. She deployed. Syria, Yemen, Somalia, places where the wrong step meant death and the right step meant classified commendations that would never appear in any personnel file. Her call sign became Fenrir the Wolf that devoured gods in Norse mythology. The name spread through special operations communities in whispers. A female handler who operated at levels that made male operators uncomfortable with their assumptions. Then came the mission that changed everything. Damascus 2023. A compound raid targeting a weapons cache. Routine work for a Tier 1 team. Raven deployed as handler support with her dog Valkyrie. The mission went wrong before the first breach. Intel had missed the tunnels. Enemy fighters poured from underground passages that weren't on any map. The team found itself surrounded, taking fire from 3 directions. Raven and Valkyrie cleared the west corridor alone. 4 enemy combatants fell before they could raise their weapons. Not because of Valkyrie, though the dog moved like a shadow at her side. Because Raven had become something more than a handler. She'd become what Lieutenant Webb had always believed handlers could be. An operator. Then Valkyrie alerted on a basement door. Standard protocol said, wait for EOD. Wait for the team. Wait for backup. Raven read something different in her dog's behavior. Not the rigid focus that meant explosives. Something else. A whimpering uncertainty that she'd only seen once before. Human distress. Children's distress. She breached alone. Behind that door, 4 children sat bound and gagged, hours away from being trafficked across the Turkish border. A network that stretched from Damascus to Berlin, using the chaos of war to move human cargo. Raven freed them, called for extraction, held them while they cried. The network she collapsed made international headlines, though her name never appeared in any report. Her face went onto a classified list that made her too valuable for conventional operations. And Lieutenant Webb died in ambush 3 weeks later. Not quite random. Someone had been hunting the wolf pack, eliminating its members one by one. Raven held Webb as she bled out in the back of a transport helicopter, held pressure on wounds that wouldn't stop flowing. Listened to the woman who'd given her purpose speak her final words. Promise me. Anything. Finish the pipeline. Go through buds. Earn the trident. Prove that handlers can make it through the same crucible as everyone else. Webb's grip tightened. Show them we're not attachments. We're operators. Force them to see. I will. I promise. Webb died 2 minutes later. It took Raven 18 months to arrange her cover. She took an administrative discharge from the wolf pack, buried her records in classified archives that required presidential authorization to access, re-enlisted under her original MOS as a veterinary technician. She showed up at Coronado with a file that said she'd never done anything more dangerous than teaching dogs to heel. The instructors saw exactly what she wanted them to see. A female candidate who didn't belong. Someone to test their theories about biology and standards and who deserved to wear the trident. They never saw the wolf hiding beneath the sheep's clothing. For 6 weeks, she endured. Every punishment evolution, every targeting session, every attempt to break her mentally when they couldn't break her physically. She endured because Webb had asked her to. She endured because her father had taught her that survival wasn't about strength. She endured because the only way to prove them wrong was to beat them at their own game. The night they threw her in the kennel, Brennan believed he'd finally won. He'd pushed the punishment evolution past regulation limits. 4 hours in the cold when 2 was maximum. Then another hour of physical training when she could barely stand. When she collapsed from exhaustion and hypothermia, he saw his opportunity. Candidate Cole is demonstrating unfitness for continued training, he announced to the other instructors. I recommend remedial correction. The other instructors exchanged glances. They'd been uncomfortable with Brennan's targeting for weeks, but he outranked them, and challenging a senior chief required the kind of courage that was easier to demonstrate in combat than in bureaucratic battles. They said nothing. Brennan dragged her to the K9 compound with 2 other instructors following. This is where you belong, Cole, with the animals, not with warriors. He threw her through the gate, and everything he believed about the world fell apart. Commander David Reeves arrived at 05:45. He'd been pulled from his quarters by a phone call that used words he hadn't heard in 3 years. Code words that existed only in classified briefings. Words that meant someone very important was in trouble. Torres met him at the kennel. Show me. Torres led him to the fence. Inside, 6 Belgian Malinois lay in a protective circle around a young woman with dark brown hair and a torn olive shirt. One dog, a female named Freya, had her head resting on the woman's lap. Reeves saw the tattoo on her forearm. His breath caught. That's the Fenrir mark, Torres said quietly. I verified it. She's Wolfpack. Was Wolfpack, Reeves corrected. The unit was disbanded after the Damascus operation. Most of them scattered to other commands. Then what's she doing in BDS? Reeves was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone accessing memories he'd hoped to forget. Lieutenant Sarah Webb. She was Wolfpack leadership. One of the best handlers I ever knew. She died 18 months ago during a classified operation. I heard about that. What you didn't hear is that she spent her last years fighting for handler integration. She believed handlers should go through the full pipeline, earn the trident, be recognized as operators, not support. Reeves gestured toward Raven. I think Webb passed that mission to someone. So she's here to prove a point, to keep a promise, to force the system to see handlers differently. Torres processed this. And Brennan just threw a decorated special operations veteran into a kennel full of attack dogs because he couldn't stand the idea of a woman succeeding at something he considers exclusively male territory. What happens now? Reeves pulled out his phone. Now I make some calls, and then I have a conversation with Instructor Sergeant Brennan that he's not going to enjoy. Inside the kennel, Raven had finally stopped shivering. The dog's body heat had warmed her. Their presence had calmed her. For the first time in 6 weeks, she felt something like peace. Thank you, she whispered to Freya. I trained you well, didn't I? Freya's tail wagged once. Raven closed her eyes and thought about Webb, about the promise, about how close she'd come to failing. Not because of Brennan's punishment evolutions, not because of the cold, or the exhaustion, or the relentless attempts to break her spirit, but because, for one moment, standing in front of him during Hell Week, she'd almost revealed herself, almost let her anger override her discipline, almost thrown away 18 months of sacrifice because a small man couldn't handle his own inadequacy. She wouldn't make that mistake again. She would finish what she'd started, graduate buds as Raven Cole veterinary technician, earn the trident through the same crucible as everyone else, and then, when the time was right, she would show them exactly who they'd been trying to break. Brennan was pacing outside the compound when Reeves found him. Commander, I can explain. No, Reeves said. You can't. She's been a problem since day one. Attitude, insubordination. She needed corrective. Stop talking. Something in Reeves's voice made Brennan obey. I've seen the training logs, Brennan. I've reviewed the footage. You've been targeting that candidate since she arrived. Punishment evolutions twice as long as regulations allow. Isolation drills designed to break her psychologically. And tonight, when standard discipline failed, you threw an unconscious candidate into a kennel full of attack dogs. They're trained dogs, Commander. I weren't trying to what, kill her? Because that's what happens when you throw someone into an attack dog enclosure. The dogs attack. That's their training. The dogs didn't attack, Brennan said, grasping for any defense. She must have done something. She did do something. She trained those dogs. Before they were transferred to Coronado, before you ever set eyes on her. She spent 3 years as one of the most effective combat handlers in special operations history. Brennan's face went pale. What? Reeves stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more menace than any shout. That woman you've been tormenting, that candidate you called worthless and done her call sign is Fenrir. She's held a silver star for actions you're not cleared to know about. She's operated in 14 countries under 6 cover identities. And she's been deliberately hiding her credentials to prove that handlers can make it through buds without special treatment. Brennan couldn't speak. You didn't break her, Brennan. You couldn't break her. Because she's already been broken and rebuilt in ways that would make you cry like a baby. All you did tonight was end your own career. Commander, please. Your training authority is suspended effective immediately. You'll be reassigned to administrative duties pending investigation. Your progression toward Master Chief is terminated. Reeves paused. And if that woman decides to press charges for what you did tonight, I'll personally testify against you. Brennan's world collapsed. Everything he'd believed, everything he'd fought for, everything he'd used to justify his behavior over 6 weeks of targeting. Wrong. All of it wrong. The woman he'd dismissed as worthless was more than he'd ever been or ever would be. "One more thing," Reeves said. "Those dogs you thought would tear her apart, she trained every single one of them. They recognized her before you finished closing the gate." Brennan looked toward the kennel. Inside, Raven Cole sat surrounded by 6 Belgian Malinois, her hand absently scratching behind Freya's ears. The dogs that should have killed her were protecting her like a pack protecting its alpha, because that's exactly what she was. Dawn broke over Coronado. The instructors who'd followed Brennan stood in uncomfortable silence, realizing the magnitude of what they'd witnessed, what they'd allowed, what they'd failed to stop. Raven emerged from the kennel on her own feet. She was exhausted, hypothermic, covered in bruises that mapped 6 weeks of abuse disguised as training. But she was standing. Torres approached her with medical blankets. "Ma'am, we have corpsmen standing by." "Don't call me ma'am," Raven said quietly. "I'm still a candidate. I haven't earned anything yet." "With respect, your record says—" "My record says I was a veterinary technician who wanted to become a SEAL. That's still true. Everything else is classified above your pay grade." She pulled the blanket around her shoulders. "I'll accept medical evaluation. Then I'm returning to training." After what happened tonight, Raven looked toward the horizon where the sun was painting the Pacific in shades of gold and amber. "Especially after what happened tonight. I didn't come this far to quit now." Torres stared at her for a long moment. "You're really going to finish?" "I made a promise to someone. Someone who believed that handlers could be operators, that we could earn the trident through the same crucible as everyone else." Raven's voice softened. "She died before she could prove it herself, so now I have to prove it for her." "Lieutenant Webb." Raven's eyes snapped to Torres. "You knew her. I knew of her. Everyone in K9 operations knew of her. She was—" Torres paused, searching for the right word. "She was legendary. She was my friend." Raven's hand went unconsciously to her left forearm to the wolf's head circling a blade. "And I'm going to keep my promise to her, no matter what it costs." Git. Brennan was gone by the time the sun finished rising. No ceremony, no acknowledgement. Just a man walking toward administrative exile, his career ending not with honor, but with the shuffle of boots on sand. Raven watched him go. She didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel vindicated. She felt tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the physical abuse she'd endured. But beneath the exhaustion, something else stirred. Determination. Brennan had been an obstacle, a test, a manifestation of everything Webb had fought against, and Raven had passed. Not by revealing herself, not by pulling rank or credentials or classified clearances, by enduring, by refusing to break, by letting her own dogs prove what she could have told them from the beginning. She was their alpha, always had been, always would be. The medical evaluation took 2 hours. Mild hypothermia, multiple contusions, 2 cracked ribs from a punishment evolution 3 days ago that Brennan had claimed was standard training. The corpsman who examined her kept glancing at the tattoo on her forearm. "That mark," he finally said. "I've seen it before. Once, on a handler who saved my life in Afghanistan." Raven pulled her sleeve down. "It's just a tattoo." "Right." The corpsman finished his notes. "You're cleared for continued training, Candidate Cole, but I'd recommend light duty for the next 48 hours. "I didn't come here for light duty." "No, I don't imagine you did." She stood, gathered her things, and walked toward the door. "Hey, Cole." She turned. "Whatever you're trying to prove, I hope you prove it. God knows this place needs it." Raven almost smiled. Almost. "Thank you." She walked out into the Coronado morning. Class 352 had 3 more weeks of training ahead. 3 more weeks of evolutions and challenges and moments where ringing the bell would be easier than continuing. Raven Cole had no intention of ringing anything. She was going to graduate. She was going to earn her trident, and she was going to honor the woman who died believing that handlers could be operators. One step at a time, one breath at a time, until the promise was kept. That night she dreamed of Webb. They were standing on a mountain trail somewhere in Colorado, the same trails where her father had taught her to survive. Webb was smiling, her wolf and blade tattoo visible in the dream light. "You didn't break," Webb said. "I almost did." "But you didn't. That's what matters." Raven looked at her hands. "Is this real? Does it matter? I guess not." Webb stepped closer. "You're almost there, Raven. 3 more weeks. Then everything changes. And if they figure out who I am, then you show them who you are, but on your terms, not because they forced your hand." Webb's smile faded into something more serious. The mission was never about hiding. It was about proving. You've proven enough for one night. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. That's how you know you're doing it right. The dream began to fade. Webb. "Yeah. I'm going to keep my promise. I know you will. That's why I chose you." Raven woke before dawn. Her ribs ached. Her body felt like it had been disassembled and reassembled incorrectly. Every muscle protested the idea of movement. She got up anyway. Class 352 was forming for morning PT. She took her place in formation, ignoring the stares of candidates who'd heard rumors about what had happened the night before. Mercer fell in beside her. "Cole, Jesus. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "That's because fine is relative." She stared straight ahead. "I'm standing. I'm here. That's fine enough." "What happened last night? I heard Brennan's gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "I mean he's not our problem anymore." Mercer was quiet for a moment. "Did you know about the dogs?" "Know what about them?" "That they wouldn't attack you, that they'd protect you instead." Raven turned to look at him. In the pre-dawn darkness, her eyes held something old and tired and infinitely patient. "When you work with dogs long enough, you learn something. They don't care about rank or gender or what file says you should be. They only care about who raised them, who fed them, who taught them to trust. And that was you. 3 years ago, before Coronado, before any of this." Mercer processed this. "You trained military working dogs. I trained dogs that saved lives." "Then why?" "Because some promises require the hard way." A whistle blew somewhere. Formation called. Raven faced forward. 3 more weeks, Mercer. Ask me again when we graduate." She didn't say if we graduate, she said when, because that was the only option. The instructors treated her differently after that night. Not easier, never easier, but with a respect that hadn't existed before. They'd heard the rumors, seen Brennan's exile, watched their commanding officer personally visit the candidate barracks to check on a woman who should have been killed by attack dogs. None of them knew the full truth. None of them had clearance. But they knew enough. They knew that Raven Cole was not what her file claimed. They knew that something extraordinary had happened in that kennel. And they knew that anyone who could walk out of an attack dog enclosure unharmed, then show up for PT the next morning, like nothing had happened, was someone worth watching. 3 more weeks of training. 3 more weeks of proving. 3 more weeks until the promise could finally be kept. Chapter. Somewhere across Coronado, Torres was having a conversation with Reeves. "What happens now, Commander?" "Now we let her finish what she started. And if she makes it, then we'll have proof that Webb was right all along. Handlers can be operators. They can earn the trident through the same crucible as everyone else. And if the others find out who she is before she graduates." Reeves was quiet for a long moment. "Then we'll deal with it. but something tells me she can handle whatever comes next. Torres thought about the woman he'd seen in that kennel, surrounded by attack dogs who treated her like family, covered in bruises from 6 weeks of abuse, still standing. "Yeah," he said finally. "I think you're right." The sun rose fully over Coronado. Somewhere in formation, Raven Cole was running through another evolution, her cracked ribs screaming with every step her body pushed past limits that would have destroyed most people. She didn't slow down. She didn't stop. She didn't even consider the bell. Because she was Fenrir, the wolf that devoured gods, and she had a promise to keep. The kennel master's radio clattered to concrete. Torres stood frozen, his flashlight still trained on Raven's exposed forearm. The wolf's head circling a blade, a mark he'd seen exactly twice in 15 years of working with Special Operations K9 units. "That's impossible," he whispered. Inside the kennel, Raven sat up slowly. Freya pressed against her side, the other dogs forming a protective ring that made no tactical sense unless you understood what they were protecting. Their alpha, their trainer, the woman who'd raised them from puppies in a program that didn't officially exist. Brennan grabbed Torres by the shoulder. "What the hell is going on? Why aren't these dogs attacking?" Torres didn't answer. Couldn't answer. His mind was racing through classified briefings he'd received years ago. Briefings about a handler unit that operated at levels most SEALs never reached. "Torres, I asked you a question." "We need to call Commander Reeves, right now." "For what? A candidate who got lucky with some dogs?" Torres finally turned to face Brennan, and something in his expression made the instructor release his grip. "That woman isn't a candidate. I don't know what she's doing in Buds, but that mark on her arm is Fenrir designation, Wolfpack, the most classified handler unit in American military history." "You're insane. She's a veterinary technician from Fort Benning. I've seen her file." "Then her file is a lie." Brennan's certainty cracked, just slightly, just enough. "Make the call," Torres said, "before this gets worse than it already is." 6 weeks earlier, Raven Cole had stepped off a bus at Naval Special Warfare Center with a file that said nothing about who she really was. The other candidates had sized her up immediately. Female, lean, 22 years old. Another diversity experiment that would wash out before Hell Week. She'd let them think it. Instructor Sergeant Kyle Brennan had been waiting on the grinder, his posture radiating the contempt he felt for anyone who didn't match his mental image of a SEAL candidate. "Listen up. You are here because someone somewhere made the mistake of thinking you might have what it takes to join the most elite fighting force on Earth. Most of you are wrong. Most of you will ring that bell before the week is out." His eyes found Raven in the formation. "Some of you don't belong here at all." She held his gaze without flinching. A mistake. She knew it immediately. Brennan was the kind of man who interpreted eye contact as challenge. "You, female candidate, step forward." Raven stepped forward. "Candidate Cole Instructor Sergeant." "Cole." He circled her slowly, making a show of examining her like livestock. "Your file says veterinary technician. That means you played with puppies while real soldiers were fighting real wars. Is that accurate?" "I worked with military working dogs, Instructor Sergeant." "Dogs." He stopped in front of her close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "You taught dogs to sit. Now you think you can become a Navy SEAL." "I'm here to find out, Instructor Sergeant." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition of a challenge he hadn't expected. "We'll see about that, Cole. We'll see." The first week was designed to break the unprepared. 4 candidates rang the bell on day 1. 7 more followed by day 3. By the end of week 1, Class 352 had lost nearly a third of its original strength. Raven endured. Not because she was stronger than the others, not because she was tougher, but because she understood something they didn't. This wasn't her first crucible. During a surf torture evolution on day 4, candidate Thomas Mercer ended up beside her in the freezing water. How are you doing this? He gasped through chattering teeth. Doing what? Staying calm. Everyone else is losing their minds, but you look like you're taking a bath. I've been colder. When? Raven was quiet for a moment. The instructors were occupied with a candidate who was showing signs of hypothermia, giving her a brief window of privacy. 3 years ago. Mountain training in a country I can't name. 48 hours in conditions that make this feel like a hot tub. Mercer stared at her. I thought your file said veterinary technician. It does. So how? Some files don't tell the whole story. Before he could respond, the instructors returned their attention to the formation. The conversation ended. But Mercer remembered, filed it away, started watching the female candidate with new eyes. Brennan's targeting began in week 2. He called it remedial training. Additional punishment evolutions for candidates who showed attitude problems or insufficient commitment. Raven received remedial training every single day. Extra surf torture, extended log PT, isolation drills that pushed the limits of regulation. Every evolution designed to break her physically when psychological pressure failed. She never complained, never explained, never broke. After one particularly brutal session, another instructor pulled Brennan aside. Kyle, this is getting out of hand. You're pushing her harder than any candidate I've seen in 5 years. She needs it. Does she? Her performance metrics are top quartile. She's outpacing half the male candidates. Her metrics don't matter. Her attitude does. Brennan's jaw tightened. She thinks she belongs here. She needs to learn that she doesn't. That's not training. That's targeting. It's standards. If she can't handle the pressure, she should ring the bell and go back to playing with dogs. The instructor walked away troubled but unwilling to challenge a senior chief directly. Brennan returned to his campaign. On day 12, Raven made a mistake. The evolution was night navigation solo across terrain designed to disorient and exhaust. She'd completed the course in record time, arriving at the extraction point before any other candidate. Brennan was waiting. Candidate Cole, you finished 20 minutes ahead of the next candidate. Care to explain how? I read the terrain efficiently, Instructor Sergeant. Read the terrain. He stepped closer. Or did you cheat? Cut corners. Use some trick you learned playing with your puppies. I didn't cheat, Instructor Sergeant. Then explain to me how a veterinary technician with no special operations background navigates a course that stumped Delta candidates. Raven felt the trap closing around her. The truth would expose her cover. A lie would give him ammunition. I have navigation experience that isn't in my file, Instructor Sergeant. Experience from where? Classified, Instructor Sergeant. The word hit like a slap. Brennan's face reddened. Classified. You're telling me your veterinary technician background is classified? Parts of it, Instructor Sergeant. You're lying. No, Instructor Sergeant. I'm protecting information I'm not authorized to disclose. For a moment, she thought he might strike her. His hands were shaking with barely contained rage. Report to the grinder at 0400. You've earned yourself a special evolution. Yes, Instructor Sergeant. She walked away, knowing she'd just made everything worse. The special evolution lasted 8 hours. Brennan ran her through every punishment in the Bud's playbook, plus a few he invented on the spot. Log carries, bear crawls, surf passage in conditions that bordered on dangerous. 3 times other instructors tried to intervene. 3 times Brennan overruled them. By hour 6, Raven could barely stand. By hour 7, her vision was graying at the edges. By hour 8, something inside her broke. Not her will, not her determination. Something else. The wall she'd built between who she was and who she was pretending to be. During a brief rest period, she found herself alone with Brennan. Why are you still here, Cole? Because I made a promise, Instructor Sergeant. A promise to who? To someone who died believing in something. Someone who thought handlers could be operators. Who thought we deserved to stand alongside the teams we support. Her voice cracked exhaustion, stripping away her defenses. She asked me to prove her right. I intend to do that. Handlers aren't operators. They never will be. Then why are you so afraid of me succeeding? The question hung between them. Brennan's eyes narrowed. I'm not afraid of anything. Yes, you are. You're afraid that everything you believe about strength and belonging is wrong. You're afraid that if I make it through this pipeline, your entire worldview collapses. Raven met his gaze despite the exhaustion blurring her vision. That's why you're targeting me. Not because I don't belong, because you're terrified that I do. For a long moment, Brennan didn't speak. Then his face hardened into something ugly and final. Report to medical. Get cleared for continued training. And understand this, Cole, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. He walked away. Raven stood alone, knowing she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The war had just begun. Hell Week arrived like a reckoning. 5.5 days of continuous training with minimal sleep. The crucible that broke most candidates who'd survived the first 4 weeks. Brennan had been saving his worst for this. He assigned Raven to every dangerous evolution, positioned her in every difficult spot, ensured that every moment of Hell Week pushed her closer to the breaking point. Tuesday night, during a boat crew evolution, everything came apart. Her crew's boat capsized in rough surf, standard hazard usually recoverable. But the other crews had been pulled away for a different evolution, leaving Raven's crew isolated. The undertow was stronger than expected. Candidate Marcus fell beneath the surface and didn't come back up. Raven was moving before anyone else processed what had happened. She dove into the churning water, her exhausted body operating on instinct and training that went far beyond Bud's preparation. She found Marcus 8 feet down, tangled in a strap from their overturned boat. His struggles were weakening. 30 seconds, maybe less, before he lost consciousness. Her fingers worked the strap by feel. Salt water burned her eyes. Her lungs screamed for air. The strap released. She grabbed Marcus and kicked toward the surface with strength she didn't know she had left. They broke the surface together. Marcus coughed, sputtered, breathed. Alive. The instructors who'd witnessed the rescue stood in stunned silence. Brennan arrived 30 seconds later, his face cycling through emotions too fast to read. What happened? Candidate Marcus got tangled in equipment during the capsize. Another instructor reported. Candidate Cole executed a rescue that... He paused, searching for words. That I've never seen a Bud's candidate perform. She dove 8 feet, freed him blind, and brought him up, all while exhausted from 3 days of Hell Week. Brennan looked at Raven, dripping and shivering on the sand. Is that accurate, Cole? I did what was necessary, Instructor Sergeant. What was necessary? His voice was flat. A veterinary technician who executes special operations level underwater rescue. How do you explain that? I don't, Instructor Sergeant. I just did it. Something shifted in Brennan's expression. Not admiration. Not respect. Something darker. Suspicion confirmed. Resume training, he ordered. All candidates. But his eyes stayed on Raven, calculating, planning, waiting for the opportunity to find out what she was really hiding. Hell Week continued. Raven pushed through Thursday and Friday on reserves she didn't know existed. Every muscle screamed. Every joint protested. Every cell in her body begged for rest. She didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Webb's voice echoed in her memory, with every step, every evolution, every moment when the bell seemed like mercy. Promise me. Anything. Finish the pipeline. Earn the trident. Prove that handlers can make it through the same crucible as everyone else. She'd promised. She would keep that promise or die trying. Friday night, the bell rang 37 times. 37 candidates who'd reached their breaking point. 37 dreams ending in the darkness of exhaustion and defeat. Raven didn't ring. When Hell Week ended Saturday morning, only 15 candidates remained standing. Raven was one of them. Brennan watched her cross the finish line, with an expression that had evolved beyond anger into something more calculated. He'd failed to break her through training. Time for a different approach. The 2 weeks after Hell Week were supposed to be recovery, reduced intensity, medical evaluations, preparation for the next phase of training. Brennan had other plans. He called Raven into his office on Monday. "Close the door." She closed it. "I've been doing some research, Cole, making some calls, asking questions about veterinary technicians who happen to have classified navigation experience and special operations rescue capabilities." Raven felt her pulse quicken. "Instructor Sergeant?" Nobody knows anything, which is interesting, because usually when someone has a classified background there's at least a hint, a colleague who remembers them, a supervisor who'll confirm dates of service, something. "I don't understand what you're suggesting, Instructor Sergeant." "I'm suggesting that you're not who your file says you are. I'm suggesting that someone created a cover story for you, and you've been hiding behind it since you arrived." "My file is accurate, Instructor Sergeant." "Your file is a lie." Brennan leaned forward. "And I'm going to prove it. One way or another, I'm going to find out who you really are, what you're really doing here. And when I do, I'm going to make sure you never come anywhere near a trident." Raven kept her face neutral despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "Is that all, Instructor Sergeant?" "For now. But understand something, Cole. I've never let a candidate beat me. I'm not going to start with you." She left his office knowing the stakes had just risen dramatically. Brennan wasn't just trying to break her anymore. He was hunting her. 2 days later, Mercer found her during a break. "Cole, we need to talk." "About what?" "About what happened during Hell Week. The rescue. The way you moved." He lowered his voice. "I've seen that kind of capability before, in operators, not in candidates." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." He moved closer. "I'm not trying to expose you. I'm trying to understand. Because if you are what I think you are, then you're going through all of this for a reason. And I want to know what that reason is." Raven studied him carefully. Mercer had proven himself during Hell Week. Steady, reliable. The kind of candidate who became the kind of SEAL you wanted watching your back. Could she trust him? "Not here," she said finally. "Tonight. Beach Access Point 4, 2300. He nodded once and walked away. She spent the rest of the day wondering if she'd just made another mistake. The beach at 2300 was empty, except for the two of them. Raven had swept the area twice, checking for surveillance or unwelcome observers. Old habits from a life she was supposed to have left behind. "What do you want to know?" she asked. "Everything. Who you really are. Why you're hiding. What's worth going through Brennan's targeting. You might not believe me. Try me." So she told him. Not everything. But enough. Webb, the wolf pack, the promise. The need to prove that handlers could complete the pipeline without special treatment. Mercer listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "The mark on your arm, the one you keep covered. Fenrir designation, everyone in the wolf pack carries it. And the dogs in the kennel, the ones Brennan's been threatening to use in training evolutions. I trained them, 3 years ago before they were transferred to Coronado." Jesus. Mercer ran a hand through his hair. "So when Brennan threatens to throw you to the attack dogs, he's threatening to reunite me with animals who love me. He doesn't know. No one knows. That's the point." Raven turned to face the ocean, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Webb believed handlers could be operators. She died before she could prove it. So now I have to prove it for her. Without shortcuts, without special treatment. Through the same crucible everyone else goes through. And if Brennan finds out, he won't, not until I'm ready for him to. Mercer was quiet again. "What do you need from me?" The question surprised her. "What?" "You've been fighting this battle alone for 6 weeks. Brennan's escalating. Other candidates are starting to ask questions. You need someone watching your back." He met her eyes. "I'm offering." Why? Because what you're doing matters. Because Webb was right. Because handlers like you deserve to stand alongside us, not behind us. He paused. And because anyone who can rescue a drowning candidate after 3 days without sleep is someone I want on my team. Raven felt something crack in her chest. The isolation she'd maintained since arriving. The walls she'd built between herself and everyone else. The burden of carrying this mission alone. Someone was offering to help. Okay, she said quietly. But you can't tell anyone, not until this is over. Understood. And if Brennan figures it out, then we deal with it together. For the first time since arriving at Coronado, Raven felt something like hope. She wasn't alone anymore. Week 6 brought the evolution that changed everything. Brennan had been planning something. Raven could see it in the way he watched her, the way he whispered to other instructors, the way he smiled with satisfaction that didn't match any training scenario. The announcement came during morning formation. Today's evolution is stress inoculation with K9 support. Candidates will be exposed to trained attack dogs in a controlled environment to prepare them for potential working situations with military working dogs. Raven's blood ran cold. The kennel. He was taking them to the kennel. Candidate Cole, you'll go first. Given your veterinary background, this should be easy for you. She saw the trap clearly now. If the dogs attacked her, Brennan would claim it proved her background was fraudulent. A real veterinary technician would be able to handle trained animals. If the dogs didn't attack her, it would raise questions about how she controlled animals trained to attack intruders. Either way, he won. Unless she could find a third option. The walk to the kennel felt like a death march. Other candidates followed at a distance, ordered to observe the evolution from outside the fence. Brennan led the way, his posture radiating the satisfaction of a man about to achieve final victory. Torres, the kennel master, was waiting. Senior Chief, I wasn't informed about this evolution. Last-minute addition, stress inoculation, standard stuff. Torres looked uncomfortable. These dogs are trained for aggressive response, putting an unfamiliar candidate in the enclosure. Are you questioning my training judgment, Staff Sergeant? I'm expressing concern for candidate safety. Noted, and overruled. Brennan turned to Raven. Candidate Cole, enter the kennel. Remain inside for 5 minutes. Do not attempt to leave before time expires. Raven looked at the fence, at the dogs pacing behind it, at Torres, whose expression suggested he knew something was very wrong, at Mercer standing with the other candidates, his face tight with helpless anger. Understood, Instructor Sergeant. She walked toward the gate. Her hand touched the latch. The dogs began to bark. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Webb's voice whispered, "Whatever happens, don't let them see you break." She opened the gate. She stepped inside. She closed it behind her. And everything she'd hidden for 6 weeks was about to be exposed. The gate clanged shut behind her. 6 Belgian Malinois turned as one. Their ears flattened, their muscles coiled, 90 pounds each of trained aggression conditioned to view any intruder as prey. Thor the alpha male moved first. He stalked toward Raven with the deliberate pace of a predator closing distance. His lips peeled back, revealing teeth that had torn through bite suits and training dummies. Behind the fence, Brennan watched with barely concealed anticipation. Clock started, Cole. 5 minutes. Raven didn't respond. Her entire focus narrowed to the animal approaching her, reading his body language, his breathing, the subtle signals that told her everything about his state of mind. Thor stopped 3 feet away. A growl rumbled in his chest, and then Raven did something that made every observer hold their breath. She knelt, slowly, deliberately, making herself smaller, more vulnerable, breaking every rule about facing aggressive animals. "Hey, boy," she said softly. "It's been a while." Thor's growl faltered. His nose twitched. Once, twice, processing a scent that didn't match his training but triggered something deeper. Memory. Recognition. His tail moved. Just a fraction. Just enough. Then he pressed his nose against her left forearm, exactly where the wolf's head circled a blade beneath torn fabric. The growl stopped completely. Thor lay down at her feet. Brennan's smile froze. What the hell? One by one, the other dogs approached. Freya, who'd deployed with her to Syria. Odin, who'd lost half an ear in the same firefight that scarred her shoulder. Valkyrie, Fenrir, Loki, Storm. Each one pressing close with the enthusiasm of a pack reuniting with its leader. Raven sat surrounded by attack dogs who were licking her face, wagging their tails, whimpering with joy. Torres grabbed the fence. Those are the most aggressive dogs in our program. I've seen them tear through level 3 bite suits in training. They should be... He trailed off, staring at the impossible scene before him. Brennan's face had gone white. This doesn't make sense. She's a veterinary technician. She's never worked with these dogs. Mercer stepped forward, unable to contain himself any longer. Maybe you should ask her about that, Instructor Sergeant. Maybe you should ask why attack dogs trained to kill intruders are treating her like their mother. Shut up, candidate. No. Mercer's voice carried across the training area. You've been targeting her for 6 weeks, trying to break her, trying to prove she doesn't belong. And now you're watching her sit in a kennel full of attack dogs like it's a petting zoo. Maybe it's time to admit you were wrong about her. Brennan spun toward him. You're on report, Mercer. Insubordination. Worth it. Inside the kennel, Raven heard none of it. She was lost in reunion with animals she'd raised, trained, deployed with. Animals she'd had to leave behind when she buried her identity to keep a promise. I missed you, she whispered to Freya. I missed all of you. Freya's tail swept the ground. Her tongue found Raven's cheek. 3 years of separation erased in a moment of recognition. Torres was already on his radio. Command, this is Kennel Master Torres. I need Commander Reeves at K9 compound immediately. We have a situation that requires flag-level attention. Static. Then, Commander Reeves is in transit, ETA 5 minutes. Torres lowered the radio, his eyes never leaving the kennel. Brennan approached him. What are you doing? My job. Torres turned to face the instructor. Those dogs were transferred here from a classified program 3 years ago. Whoever trained them had clearances I'll never see. And right now they're treating Candidate Cole like she's the most important person in the world. Coincidence. She probably smells like dog food. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Torres shook his head. I don't know who she is, Senior Chief, but I know who she isn't. She isn't a veterinary technician who got lucky. Not even close. The 5 minutes expired. Raven stood slowly, the dogs moving with her maintaining contact. She walked to the gate and opened it, stepping out with 6 Belgian Malinois following like an honor guard. Brennan blocked her path. Explain. Explain what, Instructor Sergeant? How you did that? How you controlled dogs trained to attack intruders on sight? I didn't control them. Raven met his eyes. I don't control animals. I communicate with them. There's a difference. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you. Brennan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. I know you're hiding something. I know your file is a lie. And when I prove it, I'm going to destroy you. You've been trying to destroy me for 6 weeks, Instructor Sergeant. How's that working out for you? His hand moved before he could stop himself. The slap connected with her cheek, snapping her head sideways. Gasps from the watching candidates. Torres shouting something. The dogs around Raven's legs tensing, ready to respond to violence against their handler. Raven straightened slowly. A red mark bloomed across her cheek. Blood trickled from where his ring had split her lip. She didn't flinch. That's assault, Instructor Sergeant. In front of witnesses. With dogs ready to take your arm off if I give the word. Brennan looked down at the Malinois surrounding her. 6 pairs of eyes locked onto him with predatory focus. You wouldn't. I wouldn't have to. Raven's voice was ice. They're already deciding whether you're a threat. If you raise your hand again, I won't be able to stop what happens next." Thor growled, low, warning. Brennan stepped back. "This isn't over." "No, it isn't." Commander Reeves's vehicle arrived before anyone could move. He stepped out with the controlled urgency of someone who'd received information that changed everything. His eyes swept the scene, the kennel, the dog surrounding Raven, the red mark on her face, the blood on Brennan's ring. "Everyone stay exactly where you are." He walked directly to Torres. "Report." Torres gave him the short version, the training evolution, the kennel entry, the dog's reaction, Brennan's assault. Reeves listened without interruption. When Torres finished, Reeves turned to Raven. "Candidate Cole, are you injured?" "Nothing serious, Commander." "That's not what I asked." Raven touched her split lip. "Superficial. I've had worse." "I'm sure you have." Reeves' eyes dropped to her left forearm, where torn fabric exposed the tattoo she'd hidden for 6 weeks. "I'm also sure that Mark tells a story your file doesn't include." The candidates shifted nervously. Something was happening that exceeded normal training drama. "Commander, I can explain." Brennan started. "You'll speak when spoken to Senior Chief." Reeves didn't look at him. "Torres, clear the area. All candidates except Cole return to barracks. This is now a classified situation." "Aye, Commander?" Mercer hesitated before leaving. His eyes met Raven's, a silent question passing between them. She nodded slightly. "I'm okay. Go." He went. Within minutes, only Reeves, Torres, Brennan, and Raven remained. The dogs had settled around Raven's feet, a living barrier between her and anyone who might threaten her. Reeves pulled out his phone. "I need to make a call. And then, Candidate Cole, you're going to tell me exactly who you are and why you're in my training program." "Yes, Commander." He stepped away. Brennan and Raven stood in silence, the dogs between them. "You planned this," Brennan said quietly. "You knew what would happen in the kennel." "I knew the dogs would recognize me. I didn't know you'd be stupid enough to assault me in front of witnesses." "I'm going to find out what you're hiding. And when you do, you'll realize you've spent 6 weeks targeting someone who could have destroyed your career with a single phone call. And you'll wonder why she didn't." "Why didn't you?" Raven looked at him, and for the first time something like pity flickered in her expression. "Because breaking you was never the mission. Proving something was, and proving something requires finishing what I started, not taking shortcuts because someone hurt my feelings." Brennan had no response. Reeves returned. "I've verified your identity through channels that Instructor Sergeant Brennan doesn't know exist." He faced Raven directly. "Call sign Fenrir. Wolfpack designation. 14 countries, 6 cover identities, Silver Star for actions in Damascus that remain classified. Currently operating undercover to test whether combat handlers can complete the SEAL pipeline." Each word hit Brennan like a physical blow. "That's impossible. She's 22 years old. How could she?" "She started young. Her father was Marcus Cole Special Operations, killed in Yemen when she was 17. She enlisted 6 months later. Progressed through handler programs faster than anyone on record. Was recruited to Wolfpack at 19. Reeves paused. "She's been operating at levels you'll never reach since before you made Senior Chief." Brennan's world inverted. Every assumption, every judgment, every cruelty justified as standards. Wrong. All of it catastrophically wrong. "Sir, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know. You weren't supposed to know. That was the point." Reeves's voice hardened. "But your ignorance doesn't excuse assault. Your ignorance doesn't excuse 6 weeks of targeted harassment. Your ignorance doesn't excuse throwing a decorated special operations veteran into an attack dog kennel. She was never in danger. The dogs recognized her because she trained them. But you didn't know that. You threw her in there expecting her to be mauled. You wanted her hurt. You wanted her broken." Reeves stepped closer. "That's not training, Brennan. That's attempted murder." The word hung in the air. Torres looked away. Even he hadn't framed it that starkly. Brennan's face went gray. "Commander, please. My career. Your career ended the moment you threw her through that gate. Everything after has just been confirming what we already knew about your judgment. I was trying to maintain standards. You were trying to break someone who didn't fit your mental image of a SEAL candidate. And you failed. Spectacularly. Publicly. In a way that's going to be studied in leadership courses for years." Reeves turned away from him. "You're relieved of instructor duties effective immediately. Report to administrative holding pending investigation. Your progression toward Master Chief is terminated. And if Petty Officer Cole decides to press charges, I'll personally testify against you." Brennan stood frozen. Everything he'd built, everything he'd believed, everything he'd used to justify his actions, gone. "Dismissed, Senior Chief. Now." Brennan walked away without another word. His footsteps faded into silence, carrying the sound of a career ending. Raven watched him go. She expected to feel satisfaction, vindication, something triumphant. Instead, she felt tired. Bone-deep exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. "Petty Officer Cole," she turned to Reeves. "Commander, I have questions. Many questions. But first I need to know one thing." He studied her face. "Do you want to continue? After everything Brennan put you through, you've proven more than enough. No one would blame you for walking away with your credentials restored." "Is that what you'd recommend, Commander?" "What I recommend doesn't matter. What matters is what you want." Raven looked down at Freya, still pressed against her leg. At the dogs she'd raised and lost and found again. At the compound where she'd suffered and survived and somehow remained standing. "I want to finish what I started. Even after this. Especially after this." She met his eyes. "Webb didn't ask me to prove I could survive, Buds. She asked me to prove handlers could complete the pipeline. That means graduating with my class, earning my trident the same way everyone else does. Not walking away when things get hard." Reeves was quiet for a long moment. "Lieutenant Webb chose well when she picked you." "She usually did." "The investigation will proceed. Brennan will face consequences. But your cover is compromised now. The other candidates will have questions." "I know. How do you want to handle it?" Raven considered her options. Continuing to hide was impossible. Full disclosure might undermine the mission. There had to be a middle path. "Tell them I have a classified background that's above their clearance. Tell them the dogs recognize me because I trained them before Coronado. Tell them enough to explain what happened, but not enough to change how they see me. You want them to see you as a candidate, not an operator. I want them to see me as someone who earned her place, not someone who was given it." Reeves nodded slowly. "I can work with that." "Thank you, Commander." "Don't thank me. You did this yourself. I'm just trying to keep up." He walked away to make arrangements, leaving Raven alone with Torres and the dogs. Torres approached cautiously. "For what it's worth, I knew something was different about you from day one. The way you moved, the way you watched everything. I've seen operators before and you had the look. You didn't say anything. Wasn't my place. And honestly, I wanted to see how it played out." He smiled slightly. "Webb talked about you before she died. Said you were going to change everything. Said you were the future of handler integration. She said a lot of things. She was usually right." Torres knelt to scratch Thor's ears. "These dogs missed you. I could tell something was off with them for years, but I never understood what. Now I do. They were waiting for you to come back." Raven felt her throat tighten. "I missed them too. You'll see them again. Reeves already mentioned something about reassigning them to your future unit." Torres stood. "Wherever you end up, these animals will follow. They're yours, whether the paperwork says so or not." He walked away, leaving her alone with memories and ghosts, and the dogs who'd never forgotten her. The briefing for Class 352 happened that evening. Reeves kept it simple. Classified background, attack dog training, No further questions permitted. The candidates accepted the explanation with varying degrees of curiosity and respect. Mercer found her afterward. "You could have told me." "I told you enough." "You told me about Webb, about the promise. You didn't tell me you'd trained those specific dogs. You didn't tell me Brennan was literally throwing you to animals who'd recognize you." Would it have changed anything? It would have changed how terrified I was watching you walk into that kennel. Raven almost smiled. "I wasn't in danger." "I know that now. I didn't know it then." He shook his head. "When you went through that gate, I thought I was watching you die, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. You spoke up. After. That took courage. It took anger. Brennan deserved worse than insubordination charges. He's getting worse. His career is over. Everything he built gone. That's worse than anything I could have done to him directly." Mercer was quiet for a moment. "What happens now?" "With training. I finish. We finish. 3 more weeks, then Trident ceremony. Nothing changes, except the questions people are afraid to ask. And after that..." Raven thought about the future she'd glimpsed in her conversations with Reeves. Handler integration. Program leadership. Building something that outlasted her. After that, we'll see. The next 3 weeks moved differently. Without Brennan's targeting training returned to its intended difficulty. Challenging but fair. Demanding but survivable. Raven excelled. Not because the standards were lowered. Not because the instructors went easy on her. But because for the first time since arriving, she could actually focus on training instead of survival. The other candidates adjusted to the new reality. Some treated her with increased respect, others with wariness, a few with the quiet understanding that develops between people who've shared a crucible. Williams, who'd been Brennan's most vocal supporter, approached her during the final week. "Cole, got a minute?" Williams. "I owe you an apology. I believed Brennan when he said you didn't belong. I believed him when he said the standards were eroding." He swallowed hard. "I was wrong." "Yes, you were." "I'm sorry." "Apology noted." Raven studied him. "What changed your mind?" "Watching you. After the kennel. After everything came out. You could have walked away with your credentials and told all of us to go to hell. Instead, you stayed. You finished." He shook his head. "That's not someone who doesn't belong. That's someone who belongs more than most of us." "I appreciate that. I just wanted you to know, before graduation, that some of us understand what you did here, what it cost." He walked away before she could respond. Raven watched him go, feeling something shift in her chest. This was what Webb had wanted, not just proving that handlers could complete the pipeline, but changing minds, showing people who doubted that their doubts were unfounded. Williams would never target another female candidate the way he'd supported Brennan's targeting, one convert at a time. That's how institutions changed. The final evaluation arrived like a verdict. 12 hours of continuous operations. Everything Class 352 had learned compressed into one brutal test. Combat scenarios, hostage rescues, reconnaissance. The full spectrum of SEAL capabilities tested simultaneously. Raven led her element with the confidence of someone who'd been doing this for years. Because she had. Her team cleared every objective, neutralized every threat, completed every mission parameter. When the evaluation ended, she stood with 14 other candidates who'd survived the entire pipeline. Instructor Herricks approached her. "Candidate Cole, one question." Instructor: "Was it worth it? All of it? The hiding, the targeting, the kennel?" Raven thought about Webb, about the promise, about the handler program that would follow in her footsteps. "Ask me again after graduation." Herricks almost smiled. "Fair enough." The night before the Trident ceremony, Raven visited the kennel one last time. Freya was waiting at the fence. "Tomorrow," Raven said quietly. Tomorrow, it's official. I kept my promise. The dog pressed against the chain link, her tail sweeping. Webb would be proud. I hope. I hope she's watching wherever she is. Somewhere in the darkness, another dog barked. Sharp, clear, full of life. Raven smiled. I know, Freya. I know. She stayed until midnight, saying goodbye to the life she'd lived and preparing for the life ahead. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she would earn her trident. Tomorrow, the promise would finally be kept. The morning arrived with the weight of everything that had led to it. Raven woke at 0500, her body conditioned to early rising after 7 weeks of training. But this morning felt different. Final. The culmination of a promise made 18 months ago over a dying woman's body. She dressed slowly, checked her uniform 3 times, touched the photograph of Webb she'd hidden in her gear since arriving at Coronado. Today, she whispered to the image. I finish it today. The trident ceremony was scheduled for 800. 15 candidates would receive their pins. 15 people who'd survived the most demanding military training on Earth. Raven would be one of them. The first female combat handler to earn the SEAL Trident through the complete pipeline. The proof that Webb had been right all along. Mercer knocked on her door at 0630. Cole, you ready? She opened the door. As ready as I'll ever be. You don't look ready. You look like someone carrying the weight of the world. Just the weight of a promise. Webb, my father. Everyone who believed in something I wasn't sure I could deliver. Raven stepped into the hallway. What if I got this far and it doesn't mean what I thought it would? Mercer studied her face. You're having doubts. Now after everything. Not doubts about finishing, doubts about what comes after. Webb wanted me to change things, to prove that handlers could be operators. But one graduation doesn't change an institution. No, it doesn't. Mercer fell into step beside her. But it's a start, and starts matter. Ask anyone who's ever built anything worth building. When did you get so philosophical? Somewhere around week 3 of Hell Week. Sleep deprivation does strange things to the mind. Despite everything, Raven almost smiled. The formation assembled at 0745. 15 candidates in dress uniforms, standing at attention while families and officials filled the viewing area. Cameras from Navy Public Affairs. Reporters who'd been granted limited access to document the first female handler graduation. Raven had no family in attendance. Her mother was dead. Her father was dead. Webb was dead. But as she scanned the crowd, she saw faces she recognized. Torres standing near the back with Freya at his side. The dog's ears perked when she spotted Raven, but she held position like the trained operator she was. Colonel Morrison, who'd commanded the wolf pack after Webb's death. She'd flown in from Washington for this. 7 other figures in civilian clothes, their postures betraying military backgrounds. Other Wolfpack members scattered across the globe who'd made the journey to witness this moment. She wasn't alone after all. Commander Reeves took the podium. Today we welcome 15 new members into the Brotherhood of Navy SEALs. These men and women have proven themselves through the most rigorous selection process in the world. They have earned the right to wear the trident, to call themselves SEALs, to stand alongside warriors who've defended this nation for generations. He paused, his eyes finding Raven in formation. Among them is Petty Officer Raven Cole. Her journey to this moment has been unlike any other in the history of this program. She arrived here with a classified background, operated undercover for 6 weeks, and faced challenges that would have broken most people. The crowd shifted. This wasn't the standard graduation speech. She did this to honor a promise made to Lieutenant Sarah Webb, who believed that combat handlers could complete the SEAL pipeline. Lieutenant Webb died before she could see that vision realized. Today, Petty Officer Cole completes that vision on her behalf. Murmurs rippled through the audience. The reporters were writing furiously. What happens here today isn't just a graduation. It's a proof of concept. The beginning of a new era in special operations. Handler integration will expand because of what this candidate accomplished. Lives will be saved because she refused to quit. Reeves stepped back from the podium. Let the ceremony begin. One by one, candidates stepped forward to receive their tridents. Each pin represented thousands of hours of training, countless moments of doubt overcome. The transformation from civilian to warrior. When Raven's name was called, the compound went silent. She walked forward, her footsteps echoing across the parade ground. Every eye tracked her movement. Every camera focused on her face. Reeves held the trident in his hands. Petty Officer Raven Cole, call sign Fenrir. You have completed basic underwater demolition SEAL training with distinction. You have proven that handlers can meet the same standards as every other candidate. You have honored the memory of those who believed in you. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Webb is watching. I'm certain of it. The pin pressed against her chest, cold metal on warm fabric, the symbol of everything she'd fought for. Congratulations, Petty Officer Cole. You've earned this. She saluted. He returned it, and somewhere in the crowd, Freya barked once, sharp, proud. The sound broke the solemnity of the moment. Laughter rippled through the audience. Even Reeves smiled. I think someone else wanted to congratulate you. Raven looked toward Torres and Freya. The dog's tail was wagging so hard, her entire body shook. Permission to break formation, Commander? Granted. She walked to the fence where Torres stood, knelt down, let Freya press against her through the chain link. We did it, girl. We did it. Freya's tongue found her face, wet and warm and perfect. The cameras captured the moment. A Navy SEAL in dress uniform crying into the fur of a Belgian Malinois who'd waited 3 years for her to come back. It would become the most shared image from any military graduation that year. The reception lasted 2 hours. Families celebrated with their newly minted seals. Photographs were taken. Hands were shaken. The formal rituals of military life observed and honored. Colonel Morrison found Raven near the refreshment area. Petty Officer Cole. Colonel Morrison. That was quite a moment with the dog. She's been waiting a long time for that reunion. So have you. Morrison's expression softened. Webb talked about you constantly in those last months. Said you were the future of everything she'd built. Said you'd accomplish things she could only dream about. She overestimated me. I don't think so. I think she saw exactly who you were and who you could become. That's a rare gift, recognizing potential before it's realized. Morrison glanced around the reception. Can we speak privately? Of course. They moved to a quiet corner away from the crowd. I'm here to discuss what comes next, Morrison said. Your graduation changes things. Naval Special Warfare is committed to expanding handler integration, and they need someone to lead that expansion. Me. Who else? You're the proof that the concept works. You have the credentials, the experience, the training, and more importantly, you have the vision that Webb passed to you. I'm 22 years old, Colonel. I just graduated. How can I lead a program that will reshape special operations? You'll learn, the same way Webb learned, the same way every pioneer learns, by doing the work, making mistakes, and getting better. Morrison pulled an envelope from her jacket. Orders, effective in 30 days. You're assigned to SEAL Team 7 as intelligence liaison. That's your cover. Your actual role is building the handler integration program across all teams. Raven took the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should. And if I fail? Then we learn from the failure and adjust. But you won't fail. Not at this. Webb chose you for a reason. It's time to prove she was right about everything, not just the pipeline. I already proved that. You proved handlers can complete BUDS. Now you need to prove they can lead. That's a different test entirely. Morrison checked her watch. I have a flight to catch. Read those orders. Report to Team 7 in 30 days. And remember that you're not alone in this. The entire wolf pack is behind you." She walked away without waiting for a response. Raven stood alone with orders that would reshape her life. Leader, builder, the heir to Webb's legacy. 22 years old, and the future of handler integration rested on her shoulders. No pressure. Torres found her an hour later. The colonel looked serious. She usually does. "Orders?" Raven nodded. "Team 7, handler integration lead. 30 days. Torres whistled. "That's fast. Webb's program has been in limbo since she died. They want to restart it before momentum is lost. And you're the restart." "Apparently." Torres was quiet for a moment. "You know, I've been training dogs for 15 years. Seen a lot of handlers come through. Good ones, bad ones, everything in between. And you're different. Not better at the technical stuff necessarily. There are handlers with more experience, more deployments, more time in the field." He met her eyes. "But none of them have what you have. Which is vision. Webb had it too. The ability to see what handler integration could be, not just what it is. That's not something you can teach. Either you have it, or you don't." He smiled slightly. "You have it." "How can you be sure?" "Because I watched you walk into a kennel full of attack dogs without hesitation. Because I watched you complete buds while hiding everything you were. Because I watched you take Brennan's worst and refuse to break." Torres shook his head. "That's not just skill, that's purpose. And purpose like that changes things." Raven felt something shift in her chest. "Thank you, Torres." "Don't thank me. Just don't screw it up. Webb's counting on you. We all are." He walked away to rejoin the celebration. Raven stood alone, feeling the weight of expectation settle onto shoulders that were still adjusting to carrying a trident. An unexpected visitor arrived that evening. Raven was packing her gear when the knock came. "Enter." The door opened to reveal someone she'd never expected to see again. Kyle Brennan. He looked diminished, the uniform stripped of instructor insignia. The posture defeated in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "Cole." "Brennan." She didn't stand. "You're not supposed to be on base." "I'm not. Technically. I'm shipping out to administrative assignment tomorrow. Wanted to say something before I left." "Say it." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His hands shook slightly. "I was wrong. About you. About handlers. About what belongs in this community." The words came slowly, painfully, like admitting them cost something essential. "I spent 20 years believing things that weren't true, and I used those beliefs to hurt someone who didn't deserve it. Are you expecting forgiveness?" "No. I'm expecting exactly what I'm getting. You looking at me like I'm something scraped off your boot." He swallowed hard. "I just needed to say it. Out loud. To you. That I was wrong. That you proved something I was too stubborn to see." "And what did I prove?" "That handlers aren't support personnel playing at being operators. That you belong here as much as anyone. That Webb's vision wasn't fantasy." His voice cracked. "That I wasted 6 weeks of my life trying to destroy someone who turned out to be better than me in every way that matters." Raven studied him for a long moment. She thought about Webb, who'd believed in redemption, even for people who didn't deserve it. About her father, who'd taught her that enemies were just people who hadn't found a reason to be allies yet. About the mission ahead, which would require changing minds far more resistant than Brennan's. "What are you going to do now?" "Does it matter?" "It might." Brennan looked up, surprised. "I don't understand. You spent 20 years in special operations. You know things, understand things, have experience that could be valuable." Raven stood. "You were wrong about handlers. That doesn't mean you're wrong about everything. I assaulted you, tried to destroy your career, threw you to attack dogs." "Yes, you did." She stepped closer. "And now you're standing here admitting you were wrong. That's more than most people do. It doesn't erase what happened, but it suggests you might be capable of learning. Learning what? That the world is bigger than your assumptions. That people who don't look like your mental image of warriors can still be warriors. That strength comes in forms you haven't learned to recognize yet. Brennan stared at her. Why are you saying this? I destroyed your cover, nearly ended your career, made your life hell for 6 weeks. Because someone has to break the cycle. Webb didn't fight for handler integration because she hated the people who opposed it. She fought because she believed the whole community would be stronger with us in it. Raven met his eyes. That includes you. If you're willing to actually change, not just say you've changed. The silence stretched between them. I don't know if I can change, Brennan said finally. Not really. 20 years is a long time to believe something. Then start small. Next time you see a female candidate or a handler or anyone who doesn't match your expectations, ask yourself why you're assuming they don't belong. Question the assumption. That's all change really is. Questioning what you thought you knew. And if the answer is still that they don't belong, then at least you'll have actually thought about it instead of just reacting. That's progress. Brennan was quiet for a long moment. I don't deserve your advice. No, you don't. Raven returned to her packing. But Webb would have given it anyway, and I'm trying to be more like her. He moved toward the door. Cole. What? For what it's worth, you were the best candidate I've ever tried to break. The fact that I couldn't says more about you than anything I could put into words. He left before she could respond. Raven stood alone, the weight of the conversation settling into her bones. She'd just offered guidance to the man who'd made her life hell for 6 weeks. Webb would have been proud. Or horrified. Probably both. The final night at Coronado arrived too quickly. Raven walked the compound one last time, memorizing the places that had shaped her. The grinder where she'd suffered through countless punishment evolutions. The beach where surf torture had tested her resolve. The kennel where everything had changed. Freya was waiting at the fence. Tomorrow I leave, Raven told her. But not for long. Morrison arranged your transfer. You'll be with me at Team 7. We'll deploy together again. The dog pressed against the chain link, understanding the tone if not the words. I don't know if I'm ready for what comes next. Building a program. Leading people. Being what Webb believed I could be. Raven knelt, letting Freya's warmth seep through the fence. But I know I'm not doing it alone. You'll be there. The other Wolfpack members will be there. And Webb. She paused, her throat tightening. Webb will be watching, like she always has. Freya whimpered softly. I miss her too, girl. Every day. Footsteps approached from behind. Mercer. I figured you'd be here. Last night. Had to say goodbye. To the dog or the place? Both. Raven stood. You got your orders yet? Team 3, deploying to the Pacific in 6 weeks. Good team. Good commander. Mercer moved to stand beside her, looking at Freya through the fence. I heard Morrison's assigning you to handler integration leadership, building the program Webb started. News travels fast. Special operations is a small community. Everyone knows everything within hours. He was quiet for a moment. You scared? Terrified. Good. Fear means you're taking it seriously. He turned to face her. You're going to do something important, Cole. Something that matters beyond any single deployment or mission. You're going to change how the entire community operates. Or I'm going to fail spectacularly and prove every skeptic right. Maybe, but I don't think so. And neither does anyone else who watched you go through this pipeline. Mercer extended his hand. Whatever happens next, you've got people who believe in you. Don't forget that. She shook his hand. I won't. And call me sometime. Let me know how the program's going. I want to be one of those annoying people who says they knew you before you changed everything. Despite everything, Raven laughed. Deal. Mercer walked away into the darkness. Raven stayed at the fence until midnight. Freya pressed against the chain link beside her. Tomorrow she would leave Coronado. Tomorrow she would begin building Webb's legacy. Tomorrow, everything she'd survived would become the foundation for everything she'd create. The transport to Team 7 left at 0600. Raven boarded with her gear, her orders, and the photograph of Webb she'd carried since Damascus. As the vehicle pulled away from Coronado, she looked back one final time. The compound that had tested her. The beach that had shaped her. The kennel that had revealed her. All of it shrinking in the distance until it became a memory. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror. First time leaving a training command. Yes. Gets easier. After a while you stop looking back. Raven thought about that. I'm not sure I want it to get easier. Looking back reminds me what I survived, what I learned, what I'm fighting for. The driver shrugged. Your choice. Most people prefer to forget. I'm not most people. No, I don't imagine you are. They drove in silence after that. Raven watched the coastline pass her mind, already turning toward what lay ahead. Team 7, handler integration, building something that would outlast her. Webb's voice echoed in her memory. Promise me. Anything. Finish the pipeline. Earn the trident. Prove that handlers can make it through the same crucible as everyone else. She'd done all of that. Now came the harder part. Proving that one success could become many. That one handler could become a program. That one woman's belief could reshape an entire institution. Raven touched the trident on her chest. Cold metal. Warm purpose. The promise was kept. The mission was just beginning. Team 7's compound felt different from Coronado. Raven arrived at 1400, her gear in a single duffel, her orders folded in her pocket. The gate guard checked her credentials 3 times before letting her through. Petty Officer Cole, we've been expecting you. Good things, I hope. Depends on who you ask. That wasn't encouraging. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb met her at the main building. No relation to Sarah Webb, but the name hit her like a punch every time she heard it. Cole, I'm Chief Webb, Team 7 Senior Enlisted. Chief? I'll be honest with you. Half this team thinks handler integration is the future. The other half thinks it's a waste of resources that'll get operators killed. He studied her face. You're here to prove which half is right. I'm here to build a program that saves lives. Same thing, different words. He gestured toward the building. Your quarters are in Section 3. Your dog arrives tomorrow. First briefing is at 0600. My dog. Belgian Malinois, name's Freya. Transfer paperwork came through this morning. Webb almost smiled. Heard you two have history. Raven felt something loosen in her chest. We do. Good. You'll need all the allies you can get. He walked away before she could respond. The first week was orientation. Raven learned the team's structure, their operational tempo, their internal dynamics. 16 operators divided into 2 squads, 4 support personnel, 1 intelligence liaison position that she officially filled while building the handler program on the side. The resistance was immediate. Lieutenant Commander Jason Cross, the team's executive officer, called her into his office on day 3. Petty Officer Cole, let's talk about your actual assignment. Sir, I've read your file, the classified parts, not the cover story. You're here to build handler integration across Team 7. Turn operators into partners for combat dogs. Change how we conduct missions. That's correct, sir. And you're 22 years old, with 1 BUDS graduation under your belt. No team deployments. No operational experience outside your previous classified work. Also correct, sir. Cross leaned back in his chair. I'm not opposed to handler integration. I've seen what dogs can do on missions. The intel they provide, the lives they save. But I'm skeptical that you're the right person to build this program. What would convince you otherwise, sir? Results. Show me that handlers can operate at the level we require. Show me that your methods work in real operational conditions. Show me that you're not just Webb's protege coasting on her reputation. The mention of Webb's name stung. I earned my trident the same way every other SEAL did, sir. I'm not coasting on anyone's reputation. Then prove it. You have 90 days to show measurable progress. After that, I'll make my recommendation to command about whether this program continues. Understood, sir? Dismissed. Raven left his office knowing she'd just been given a deadline that could end everything before it started. Freya arrived the next morning. Torres had personally escorted her from Coronado, unwilling to trust the transfer to standard military shipping. She missed you, Torres said as Freya pressed against Raven's legs. Wouldn't eat properly for a week after you left. I missed her too. I know. Torres handed over Freya's records. She's in peak condition, ready for whatever you need her to do. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me. Just don't waste what you've built. He paused. Webb would have wanted me to say something encouraging. Something about believing in yourself and trusting the process. And what do you want to say? That the next 90 days will determine whether her program lives or dies. That you're carrying weight that would crush most people. And that I'm betting everything I have on you succeeding. He walked away without looking back. Raven knelt beside Freya, letting the dog's warmth ground her. 90 days, girl. That's what we have to prove everything. Freya's tail wagged. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The first month focused on demonstration. Raven worked with Freya on missions that didn't officially exist. Compound clearances where the dog's senses identified threats that surveillance couldn't detect. Reconnaissance operations where Freya's nose found hidden caches and buried weapons. The operators who worked with her began to change their minds. Petty Officer First Class Derek Santos approached her after a particularly successful mission. That thing Freya did with the weapons cache. How'd she know it was there? Dogs can smell trace chemicals that humans can't detect. Explosives, accelerants, certain metals. Freya's trained to alert on specific signatures. She found 30 pounds of Semtex buried under 3 feet of concrete. Our tech couldn't see it. Our intel didn't know about it. But your dog walked right to it. That's what she's trained to do. Santos shook his head. I've been skeptical about this handler thing. Thought it was another Pentagon experiment that would get people killed. He met her eyes. I was wrong. Does that mean you'll support the program? It means I'll stop actively opposing it. Support comes when you've proven this works long-term, not just on one mission. Progress. Slow but real. Week 6 brought the first major test. An operation in Yemen. High-value target. Compound with unknown internal layout and suspected IED emplacement throughout. Cross called Raven into the planning session. We need eyes inside that compound before we breach. Traditional reconnaissance is compromised. UAVs can't penetrate the structure. Human assets are burned. You want to send Freya in. I want to know if it's possible. Raven studied the intelligence package. The compound, the suspected defenses, the target's security protocols. It's possible, but risky. If they detect Freya, they'll know we're coming. Can she avoid detection? She's trained for low-signature infiltration, silent movement, minimal electronic signature, but there's always risk. Cross was quiet for a moment. This is what handler integration is supposed to enable, right? Capabilities we don't currently have. Yes, sir. Then make it work. We insert in 72 hours. Raven spent the next 3 days preparing. She ran Freya through infiltration drills, reviewed the compound layout until she could visualize it in her sleep, coordinated with the assault team on timing and signals. The night before insertion, she visited Freya in the Kennel area. This is it, girl. The mission that proves whether we belong here or not. Freya pressed against her hand. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But we've done harder things. We've survived worse odds, and we've got each other. The dog's tail wagged once. That's all we've ever needed. The insertion happened at Aero 200. Raven and Freya deployed with the assault team, moving through terrain that offered minimal cover. Every step calculated, every breath controlled. At the compound perimeter, she gave the signal. Freya moved forward alone. The dog slipped through a drainage pipe that human operators couldn't fit through. Raven tracked her position through a small camera mounted on her tactical vest. Freya's inside, she reported, moving to primary structure. Copy, standing by. The minutes stretched like hours. Freya navigated the compound with precision that bordered on supernatural. Her camera captured the internal layout, the guard positions, the IED placements that would have killed the assault team. Multiple IEDs on approach vector Alpha, Raven reported. Recommend alternate entry through northwest corridor. Copy, adjusting. Freya found the target on the 3rd floor. A single room, 2 guards outside. Electronic security on the door. Target confirmed. 3rd floor northeast corner. 2 hostiles. Electronic lock. Can you get more detail? Raven studied the feed. Freya survey. The dog moved closer to the door, her camera capturing details that satellites couldn't see. Lock type. Guard armament. Window placement. Lock is standard keypad. Guards armed with AK pattern rifles. Window on east wall, no security grate. Outstanding. Begin extraction. Freya retraced her route, slipped back through the drainage pipe, returned to Raven's position without a single hostile detecting her presence. Freya's clear. Intel package complete. Copy. Commencing assault. The operation went perfectly. The assault team used the intelligence Freya gathered to breach through the northwest corridor, avoiding the IEDs that would have devastated their approach. The target was captured without American casualties. Cross found Raven during the exfiltration. That was impressive. Freya did the work. Freya followed your training, your commands, your judgment. He paused. I'm recommending expansion of the handler program, full integration with Team 7 operations. Raven felt something crack in her chest. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. You proved it yourself. I'm just acknowledging reality. The reality that Webb had been right all along. Month 3 brought the final test. Not an operation, a decision. Admiral William Torres arrived at Team 7 for an assessment visit. The same admiral who'd supported handler integration from the beginning. Petty Officer Cole, walk with me. They walked through the compound, Freya at Raven's side. I've reviewed your operational reports. Impressive results. 4 missions with handler support. 0 American casualties. 3 high-value targets captured. We've been fortunate, Admiral. Fortune had nothing to do with it. You've built something here. Something that's catching attention at levels you can't imagine. He stopped walking. That's why I'm here. Sir, Naval Special Warfare Command is recommending expansion of handler integration across all SEAL teams. A program-wide initiative based on your model, training protocols, selection criteria, operational integration. Raven felt the ground shift beneath her feet. All teams. And they want you to lead it. Me. Who else? You're the proof that the concept works. You have the credentials, the experience, the results, and more importantly, you have Webb's vision. Torres turned to face her. This is what she wanted, Cole. Not just one handler on one team. A complete transformation of how Special Operations uses combat dogs. I'm 22 years old, Admiral. There are officers with decades more experience who should be leading something this important. Experience isn't everything. Vision matters more. Webb understood that. She chose you before you understood it yourself. Torres handed her an envelope. Orders. Effective in 60 days. You'll be establishing the Combat Handler Integration Program at Little Creek. Training facilities. Selection protocols. Everything needed to build what Webb imagined. Raven took the envelope with shaking hands. What if I'm not ready? You're not. Nobody's ever ready for something this big. But you'll learn. The same way Webb learned. The same way every pioneer learns. He smiled slightly. Besides, you'll have help. Colonel Morrison is transferring 3 Wolfpack members to support you. Torres from Coronado is requesting reassignment to your program. And I'm told there's a Belgian Malinois who refuses to work with anyone else. Freya's tail wagged as if she understood. You have 60 days to wrap up here and transition to Little Creek. Use them well. The Admiral walked away. Raven stood alone with orders that would change everything. Program Director. The role Webb had died trying to create. The future she'd never imagined, now resting in her hands. The transition took exactly 60 days. Raven documented everything she'd learned at Team 7. Trained her replacement. Briefed Cross on how to continue handler operations until the expanded program could provide additional support. On her last night, she visited the team compound one final time. Santos found her near the equipment bay. Heard you're leaving. Little Creek, building the program that brings handler integration to everyone. That's big. That's terrifying. Santos laughed. You know what I remember about when you first got here. I thought you were too young, too inexperienced. Another Pentagon experiment that would fail and disappear. And now I think you're still too young. Still inexperienced in a lot of ways, but I was wrong about the rest. He met her eyes. You changed my mind, Cole. Changed a lot of minds around here. That's not nothing. It's a start. Starts are all anyone ever has. The rest is just continuation. He walked away. Raven stayed until midnight, memorizing the place that had transformed her from a Buds graduate into something more. Tomorrow, she would become something else entirely. Tomorrow, she would start building Webb's dream. Little Creek felt like coming home. Not because Raven had been there before, but because it felt like the place she'd always been moving toward. The Combat Handler Integration Program occupied 3 buildings and a dedicated training compound, facilities that had been built for this purpose, space for a mission that would reshape special operations. Torres was waiting when she arrived. Took you long enough? Traffic on 64 was terrible. Traffic's always terrible. You should know that by now. He smiled. Welcome to your new Command Program Director, Cole. That title still feels wrong. It'll feel right eventually. Everything does if you give it enough time. Freya bounded ahead, exploring her new territory with the enthusiasm of a dog who sensed important work ahead. The first class of handler candidates arrived 2 weeks later. 12 men and women selected based on criteria that Webb had developed years ago. Handlers with potential. Operators with the right mindset. People who could become what Raven had become. She addressed them on their first day. You've been selected for the Combat Handler Integration Program. That means someone believes you have what it takes to become an operator who works alongside military working dogs at the highest levels. 12 faces stared back at her. Nervous. Determined. Uncertain. I'm Petty Officer First Class Raven Cole. Call sign Fenrir. 2 years ago, I was a candidate like you, struggling to prove that handlers could complete the SEAL pipeline, fighting against people who believed I didn't belong. She paused, letting the weight of memory settle. I proved them wrong. Now I'm here to help you prove the same thing. Not for yourselves, for everyone who comes after. Every handler who dreams of operating at this level. Every dog whose potential is limited by outdated thinking. What happened to the people who said you didn't belong? One candidate asked. Some of them changed their minds, some of them didn't, but their opinions stopped mattering once I delivered results. Raven met the candidate's eyes. That's what this program is about. Results. Not politics, not opinions. Results that prove handlers make special operations better. And if we fail, then we learn from the failure and get better. That's what Webb taught me. That's what I'm teaching you. Failure isn't the end. It's information. Use it. The candidates absorbed this. Training begins tomorrow at 0500. Get some rest. You'll need it. The first year was the hardest. Building a program from nothing. Developing curriculum that didn't exist. Fighting bureaucratic resistance from people who still believed handlers were support personnel. 3 candidates washed out in the first month. 2 more followed by month 3. But 7 remained. 7 people who would become the foundation of something larger. Colonel Morrison visited quarterly, providing guidance and political cover when the resistance grew fierce. "You're doing well," she said during the 6-month review. "Better than anyone expected." "It doesn't feel like enough." "It never does. That's how you know you're pushing boundaries." Morrison handed her a report. "First deployment request for your graduates. Team 3 wants handler support for an operation in the Philippines." Raven read the request. High-value target. Complex terrain. Exactly the kind of mission that demonstrated handler value. "Which graduate?" "Your choice. Who's ready?" Raven thought about the 7 remaining candidates. Their strengths, their weaknesses, their potential. Chen. She's the best of the first class. Her dog Shadow has the highest detection accuracy we've recorded. Then send Chen. And if something goes wrong, then you deal with it the same way you've dealt with everything else, by learning and getting better. Morrison stood. Webb faced the same fears when she sent her first handlers into the field. She told me something once that I've never forgotten. What? That the only way to prove a concept works is to test it in the real world. Controlled environments prove nothing. The field proves everything. Morrison left. Raven sat alone with the weight of sending her first graduate into harm's way. Chen deployed 3 weeks later. The mission went perfectly. Shadow detected a buried weapons cache that saved 12 American lives. Chen's after-action report became required reading at Naval Special Warfare Command. Handler integration had its first independent success story. The second year brought expansion. 3 more classes of candidates. 2 additional training facilities. A budget that tripled overnight as the program proved its value. Raven found herself spending more time in meetings than in training. Politics and paperwork and the endless bureaucracy of military leadership. Torres noticed the change. "You're not happy." "I'm effective. That's what matters." Effectiveness without happiness burns people out. I've seen it happen to better leaders than you. He sat beside her in the office she now occupied. "When's the last time you actually worked with a dog?" Raven thought about it. 3 weeks ago. Maybe 4. That's too long. You became who you are by working alongside animals. You can't lead this program from behind a desk. "I don't have a choice. The administrative demands are endless and will always expand to fill whatever time you give them." Torres interrupted. "Delegate, trust your people. Get back to the work that makes you effective. And if the program suffers, it won't. The program suffers when its leader loses touch with what made her special. And right now, you're losing touch." He left her with that thought. Raven sat alone for a long time. Then she canceled her afternoon meetings, walked to the training compound, and spent 4 hours working with Freya on detection drills. It was the best she'd felt in months. Year 3 brought the recognition she'd never sought. The Navy Cross nomination arrived without warning. For actions in Yemen. For the mission that proved handler integration could work. For risking her life and her dog's life to provide intelligence that saved an entire assault team. Admiral Torres delivered the news personally. "You're being recognized for Valor Cole, the mission that changed everything." That was 2 years ago. Paperwork takes time, but the recognition is real. You're the first handler in Naval Special Operations history to receive the Navy Cross. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Say you'll use the platform to advocate for the program you've built. Say you'll continue being the leader Webb believed you could be. Raven thought about Webb, about the promise, about everything that had led to this moment. I'll accept it, on one condition. What condition? That Freya is recognized too. Without her, none of this would exist. Torres smiled. I think we can arrange that. The ceremony happened at the Pentagon. Raven stood in her dress uniform, Freya beside her in a tactical vest bearing the Wolfpack insignia. The Secretary of the Navy presented the medal while cameras captured every moment. For extraordinary heroism in combat operations that resulted in the successful capture of a high-value target and the preservation of American lives. Petty Officer First Class Raven Cole is awarded the Navy Cross. The medal settled against her chest. Cold metal, warm purpose, just like the trident she'd earned 3 years ago. After the ceremony, she found a quiet moment with Freya. We did it, girl. Everything Webb asked us to do, the pipeline, the program, proving that handlers can be operators. Freya pressed against her leg. I wish she could see this. See what we built. See how many lives we've saved. A voice spoke from behind her. She can see it. Raven turned. A woman she didn't recognize stood nearby. Older, distinguished, wearing civilian clothes that couldn't quite hide a military bearing. I'm sorry. Sarah Webb, she can see it. The woman stepped closer. I'm her mother, Margaret Webb. I wanted to meet the woman who kept my daughter's promise. Raven felt tears threatening. Mrs. Webb? Margaret, please. She took Raven's hands. Sarah talked about you constantly in her last months. Said you were special. Said you'd accomplish things she could only dream about. She was the special one. I'm just trying to live up to what she believed. That's all any of us can do. Live up to what the people who loved us believed we could be. Margaret squeezed her hands. She would be so proud of you, Raven, so incredibly proud. The tears fell. Raven didn't try to stop them. Some moments were too important for composure. 1 year later, Raven stood at Coronado, not as a candidate, not as a visitor, as a keynote speaker at the annual Naval Special Warfare Symposium. 5 years ago, I arrived at this compound hiding everything I was, pretending to be a veterinary technician, hoping to prove that handlers could complete the SEAL pipeline. The audience listened in silence. Commanders, admirals, the next generation of special operations leadership. I was wrong about a lot of things. I thought proving the concept was about me, about my success, about keeping a promise to someone who died believing in something. She paused. It wasn't. It was about building something larger than any individual, a program that would outlast me, a legacy that would continue regardless of who led it. Freya sat beside her, gray appearing in her muzzle now, but still alert. Still ready. The Combat Handler Integration Program has trained 47 graduates. Those graduates have deployed to every theater where American Special Operations Forces conduct missions. They've detected threats that saved hundreds of lives. They've proven that dogs aren't equipment, they're partners. But none of that matters without what comes next. The handlers who will follow, the dogs who will serve, the missions we can't yet imagine. She looked across the audience. Lieutenant Sarah Webb believed in something most people thought was impossible. She died before she could see that belief become reality. But she trusted someone to carry it forward, to build what she imagined, to prove her right. I've spent 5 years honoring that trust. Now I'm passing it on. To every handler who comes after, to every operator who works alongside them, to everyone who believes that partnership is stronger than dominance. That's Webb's legacy. That's what we're building together. Raven touched the trident on her chest, the Navy Cross beside it, the symbols of everything she'd become. She was right. About all of it. Handlers can be operators, dogs can be partners, and the impossible becomes possible when someone refuses to accept that it isn't. She stepped back from the podium. The audience rose. Applause filled the compound where she'd once been thrown to attack dogs by a man who believed she didn't belong. Freya's tail wagged. Somewhere Webb was watching, and the promise that had started with 2 words spoken over a dying woman's body was finally completely eternally kept. Raven Cole had proven them all wrong, and she was just getting started. The end.